This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community. Episode 115. I'm Nancy Ree.
And I'm Harold Ree.
Today's guest is the amazing Nicole Holland, entrepreneur and host of Get Guest Ready.
What's your mission? What's your purpose? What are your values? The next step is focusing on who you want to reach, who your ideal listener is, who your ideal adopter is. And you're only focusing on them, and you find the shows that they're listening to. And then you develop relationship with the hosts, and then you get the guests and you get on, and it's beautiful.
Nicole Holland was recently named by the Huffington Post as one of 50 must-follow women entrepreneurs in 2017. There are several ways to find her. Her website, interviewsthatconvert.com, the Business Building Rockstars Show, and her latest podcast, Get Guest Ready. We're super excited to ask Nicole how she would use her business background to help animal rescue organizations. If you want to learn more about Nicole Holland and Get Guest Ready, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/115. You can also go to her own website, interviewsthatconvert.com/pawprint.
I'm super excited because I have always had cats. I have two right now. One of them was my neighbor found somebody threw these kittens out of a second-story window.
Oh, my goodness.
And I have friends who do rescue. So, because she takes in all these cats and like feeds the neighborhood cats. And she's an elderly lady, and she's like, I can't do it anymore. So she called me and she said, can you get your friends that do rescue? So I said, yes. Well, they couldn't come over right away. So I said, all right, let me go get these cats and like at least bring them inside. And they were like teeny, tiny little babies, and they were all dirty and flea infested. Of course, your listeners know about this.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got there, another neighbor had already taken one, and there was this one little guy hopping around. She grabbed him and put him in my hand. And I would say like 20 minutes into that, I was like, I called my friend. I'm like, you don't need to come. So that's not, so I didn't get him from an agency or anything, but he is my first rescue. And then the second one that I have running around here was just another kind of like, a city cat that was not wanted, and it came from a household that had lots and lots of animals that they just didn't take care of, and he was hopping around in a house I was showing at the time, and so after I left, I saw him like really just sitting there in the tall grass, and I'm like, okay, come here, and then he like came to me, and I was like, you want to come home with me? And I put him in the car.
Amazing.
So yeah, I tell this story because I love animals. My father is heavily involved with his wife in animal rescue as well, with dogs. And it's just, I love what you're doing here. I love what your listeners are doing. And I'm super excited to share my wisdom and gifts. And in a nutshell, like you said, I'm a podcaster. Started my business all around connecting people and building relationships and providing resources for seekers that wanted to build online businesses. Mm-hmm. And through those connections and through what I call a virtual summit, which was what I did initially, interviewing experts, sharing resources. I had interviewed a man by the name of John Lee Dumas, and he was my podcasting rock star. My brand was the Business Building Rockstars. And so he said to me, Nicole, if you enjoy interviewing and you're good at it, rather than doing a summit, you should think about podcasting. I was like, well, I'm already doing summits. That's not like going away. But I took his advice and looked into it, and eventually wound up hiring him, as you did. That's where we've connected through his organization, through his program, Podcasters Paradise, to learn about how to create a podcast. So I came into podcasting just over a year ago, knowing nothing about it, having never even listened to a podcast, really. I listened to like one, but I didn't know that it was a podcast. I just listened on somebody's website, and I was like, oh, this is really awesome that they're talking instead of me having to read. But as I became a podcaster, I got really critical of my guests, not critical in a criticizing way, but critical in that I was really noticing what made different guests stand out from each other. So what people were doing that made me think, oh my gosh, I want to go above and beyond for you. How can I support you? What can I do for you? Versus guests who made me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that's over and I don't want to deal with that person anymore. And so I started noticing these things and then I started sharing them. So with people that I did have good rapport with, if I learned something by seeing a guest that did something special, I would tell another guest, hey, you know what? This is something that happened with this other guest. You might want to try it out as well. And they would be so appreciative. And then I started trying these things as a guest. I would test my theories and noticed what would happen. And so I started writing about it because I thought everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to know how to be a great guest and what makes a great guest, because I didn't know when I started guesting what I was doing wrong, because how could I, right? Nobody's going to tell you that kind of stuff.
So when you're talking about this, it's specifically about podcasting, but have you found that it really applies to really just kind of like any guesting on any kind of business platform?
No. And here's why.
Okay.
Now, it does apply to guesting in most regards to summits as well, but podcasting is very different than mainstream media. So when you go on as a guest, if you're like going on to share about your agency, or you're wanting to share about an animal that is up for adoption or something like that, you're going on TV with a very specific agenda, a very short period of time, and you'd better be able to talk in sound bites and get people to connect fast and want to know what you have to offer and buy in. Now, in that last respect, you definitely need to make that fast connection. But with a podcast, you don't go in with an agenda. Some of the worst guests that I've experienced and that other podcasters I've surveyed for in my research have experienced are ones that have their own, like, this is what we're going to talk about. The beauty of a podcast is it's an intimate opportunity for a conversation between the host and the guest, and also for the audience to be a party to that. I like to say it's like, going to a cafe. Harold, if we were to go to a cafe, if I was over, I think you're in San Francisco, right? Mm-hmm. But you're from, this might actually happen because you're from Buffalo and I'm just across the lake. So, maybe one day we're going to go to a cafe and we're going to sit down and we're going to be so intense talking about stuff that really lights us up. And there's going to be other people at the cafe and they're going to start noticing, just because of our powerful energy and excitement, and they'll probably hear us, but we're not talking to them. We're just not hiding it from them. And that's kind of what I equate a podcast interview to. It's like, people are listening and you're happy to have them as a part of the dialogue, but the two-way communication is really between the host and the guest. The way Get Guest Ready came about was people were asking me the same things over and over. And not only were they asking me, but I was telling them. I was going to write a book about it. I will be writing a book about it. But first came a program. I was asked for that. Then I started actually taking care of booking people, coaching people around being a great guest. And finally I said, you know what? Everybody just needs to have access to this information. And so that's why I created Get Guest Ready.
Awesome. So you have a podcast split up into a variety of different lessons or episodes. What are maybe the most important lessons that you can impart to, let's say, an animal rescue organization that is trying to spread the word through being a guest on a podcast?
I'm so glad you asked, because most people, they just want to jump ahead and they assume that they know. The truth is, in my personal teaching at least, is everything starts from mindset and from intention. And so that's why in Get Guest Ready, the podcast, and I also have a course that goes with it, I start with really helping you understand what's your mission, what's your purpose, what matters to you, what are your values. And when you focus on that, and then the next step is focusing on who you want to reach, who your ideal listener is, who your ideal adopter is, and you're only focusing on them, and what they want and what they need. And then you start doing your research and you find the shows that they're listening to. And then you develop relationship with the hosts, and then you get the guests and you get on, and it's beautiful. Whereas most people will say, okay, I want to do a podcast, so I'm going to go look for popular podcasts and I'm going to go and be on their podcast. But they're missing so much in the middle. Like, we have to develop relationship. We have to, it's kind of like dating. You know, when you want to get somebody's attention, you don't just go up to them and say, hey, let's get married. I mean, I'm sure there's people that do that, and it probably works for a very, 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 very small fraction of people. But for the most part, if you are like, wow, I'm really interested in that person, there's a whole process you need to go through to get their attention before you can even find out. Then once you get their attention, all right, now let's see, is this somebody that I want to spend the rest of my life with? How do you get to know that? You don't know it in an instant generally. To actually take that step to get married and all, it takes time, right, to have a family. So I like to have people think about podcast guesting kind of in that way. And a lot of people will disagree with me. A lot of people say, that's ridiculous, Nicole. And that's cool. They're not my people. But what I know is that I have built a business that is very lucrative very quickly. I've gotten a lot of amazing recognition, not because I was seeking it out, but because I was doing these things. I was building these relationships. I was giving value. And something that a lot of people miss out when it comes to branding and building a platform, they don't realize that it's not what you tell people. It's not what you say you want people to know about you. It's not what you claim about yourself that matters. It's what people say about you when you leave the room. It's what people think about you when they hear your name. It's building that reputation by being who you want them to experience, not trying to convince them of what you want them to experience.
Can you give an example of when someone approached you to be a guest on your show and you thought they did a phenomenal job of getting guest ready versus maybe someone who didn't do as good of a job trying to get onto your show?
One of the things that I teach in the podcast and, you know, in the free course that goes with it is that the podcaster's journey is just like any other journey. We come out fresh and new and, you know, as babies, and we're learning to walk, and then we're, growing up. And as podcasters, we mature and we improve. And over time, our not needs, but our desires improve and our qualification changes. And so I would have to say that today, my example of a great guest that is completely guest ready and gonna wow me is exactly what I teach in my podcast. And that came from lots of different guests just wowing me and showing me that these little things make such a difference. In terms of what not to do is pretty much what everybody else teaches. What not to do is send me just put me on a list of a bunch of people you're pitching. You know, I didn't ask to see your one sheet. I didn't ask about your accomplishments. So why do you think it's appropriate to put that in my inbox? I don't know. But when people do that, it is definitely not going to get my attention, at least not in a good way. It will generally go to junk, or I'll educate people by sending them a canned response that just says, thanks for your interest. You know, if you would have looked at my website, you would see that there's a link there that says, be a guest, and, you know, go through the process that way, or, you know, listen to my podcast. So I can give you some tips to get guest ready. Number one should be listen to my podcast.
There you go.
They're very digestible, very short episodes. And there's also a follow-up course if you want to go deeper, if you want to get my templates and all that. And it's totally free. But even just listening to the podcast will give you a different perspective. But then what you want to do is before you reach out to somebody, at least do the minimum of listening to their show. And if you like it, leaving a 5-star rating and review, that matters. And if you don't think it's a 5-star show, then you should not pitch them in the first place. So listen to the show, leave a review. I say build rapport first, but you also want to check their website and really scour it and see if there's anything on their website about how to pitch them. Because a lot of times hosts will tell you exactly what to do if you want to be a guest. And it just, to me, it shows laziness and disrespect if people don't take that, 2-3 minutes to check that out before reaching out and saying, hey, I want to be your guest. It's like, well, first of all, I don't know who you are. And second of all, why should I now take my time to respond to you privately and personally when I've already gone through the trouble of putting everything out there publicly? So definitely check their site, see if there's any kind of FAQ or anything that talks about how to approach them, if there's a contact form, anything like that. I also recommend, before you ask anybody for anything, and this does go back to your question before about doesn't this apply to everything? I think it does on this level. Give them some love, like show interest in them. If you're using Twitter, for example, I love Twitter. I'll curate their content. I'll put out content that they've already created that I think is of value to my audience. And maybe I'll post something, comment on something, share something, retweet something. So by giving them an experience and letting them know you exist, that it really can work in your favor so that when you're ready to ask them for something, you've already provided value to them.
Now we're talking to Nicole Holland. She is the podcaster behind Get Guest Ready, as well as the Business Building Rockstars Show. When you think about your own clients, does it only apply to for-profit endeavors, or can it apply to not-for-profits like animal rescue organizations?
Absolutely, it can apply to not-for-profits. If you think back to Blockbuster, and all the different places that wanted to be Blockbuster and all the little mom and pop shops that opened up for video rentals and then DVD rentals. And it was everywhere, right? And then Netflix came along and it took some time, but over time, Blockbuster went bust. And they even tried to get into the Netflix game, right? I remember having, and it was back when, because Netflix first started with actually mailing the DVDs, right?
That's right.
And then Blockbuster tried to follow that, but Netflix stayed on the bleeding edge, and they are around today and they are powerful today. And there are more places like Amazon and Hulu and all these different opportunities for people to get their TV and movies on demand virtually. And I think that that's where we're going with media overall. Facebook is investing huge amounts of money right now into live video. On-demand content and virtual content is really going to just continue to grow. There's no way around it. And so podcasting, while it's still a little bit fringe and not everybody is really familiar with it or experiencing it, I think in 5 to 10 years, radio will be podcasting. I don't think terrestrial radio is ever going to go away. But in terms of what we know to be and how the kids and everybody are connecting with the programs they want, I think it's going to be through podcasting. And so back to your question, it doesn't matter whether you are in an organization or represent an organization that is not for profit, that's nonprofit, that's for profit, that's a celebrity. It doesn't matter. Audio media is going the way of podcasting. And so the sooner you can find a way of connecting and just kind of imagine that it's the way you already recognized to connect with TV or radio or the newspaper. If you ever felt like I need to be there to get my message out and to support my organization, then it's absolutely the same thing in that respect with podcasting. The positioning will be different. The experience will be different. The way you pitch yourself, the way you interact will be different. But if you think that TV is a way for you to go, think podcasting as well.
Okay. To me, the best organizations really are good at a lot of what you're talking about. They have a clear message, right? That whole mindset. They sometimes either have volunteers or other folks who do the reach out for whether it's television or social media, or maybe it is podcasting. Any other sort of pieces of advice that you might offer a nonprofit to really make sure that they are really, for the limited resources they have, they are really maximizing the message that they're trying to send out?
Absolutely. So first of all, we didn't even talk about this part, but you have to be ready to rock. Like when you go onto a podcast, like don't have people start to pitch you until you're ready to do it. In fact, I just onboarded a new client and we talked on Friday and I said, are you ready? Like, and I need your calendar and everything. And he's like, well, yeah, but I mean, it's probably not going to happen right away. Well, here we are, we're recording on Monday and I got a message from him saying you were busy. I said, yeah. So over the weekend, I booked him on five podcasts. It really can happen that fast. So make sure before anybody starts pitching you, you have these resources in place. Get a microphone, get an external microphone. The best bet, if resources are limited, is to get headsets for anybody that is going to be interviewed. And That's you can get a clear chat. And Harold, I'm sure you'll put the link for that. It's about $25. And I understand, especially with like rescue organizations, how that can be, even $25 can be a big expense. A fun way that you might want to do it and get some more buy-in and maybe even get some invitations is if you're already using social media, like Facebook especially, I think is a great place to do this because it is such a personal, like people are really more personal on Facebook than on other platforms. I would probably say, I'd put a post out to my friends and family and I'd be like, hey, I'm really excited about this idea of getting on podcasts. And I was listening to a podcast and it made a lot of sense. And I really want to bring my organization forward by getting on podcasts. And another question that wasn't asked yet, but it comes up is what about when organizations are local and they're not worldwide? There are podcasts that are local. And if there is not a local podcast or 5 in your area yet, there will be. Oh, yeah. So
absolutely. Great idea.
Yeah. So you can always find the right, you as long as there's a will, there is a way. But you could say, hey, I'm really excited. I want to start spreading the message of our organization on podcasts, but I wonder if anybody can help us with that. So here's what we're looking for. Number one, if anybody wants to sponsor us with this headset, and you can just put the Amazon link right there. You can say, this would be amazing. Yeah. This is what we need. And you could also say and if you know of any podcasts that you love listening to, that would be a good fit for our message, please post it in the comments below. So then you're going to get names of podcasts that you've probably never heard of, and you probably wouldn't any other way, from your friends, fans, audience, people in your life who care about you, who care about your message. They're going to tell you what they're listening to. And you never know what could come of that. There could be introductions made and so on. So you want to make sure that you engage people and ask them for support. This is something that I always get a kick out of. People who are animal rescuers, people who are devoting any amount of time and resources and love to a cause, they're not ones that often are willing to ask or accept support that they need and that they deserve and that people want to support them. And oftentimes it's in ways that they may not recognize. And so just by letting people know here's what I want to try out. Anybody have any ideas for that? Do you have any connections? And, hey, if you want to give me a gift, this is what I want. Just asking and putting it out there, you'll be amazed at what you'll get back.
If someone really wants to get started, they've listened to your podcast series, Get Guest Ready, what other ways can they work with you? What other ways can they connect with you?
Thank you for asking. That's really sweet. When you're listening to Get Guest Ready, I am promoting my free course. There's seriously no cost. And that's a great way to work with me and to get more from me and to connect with me. So there's a couple things here. You can also, if you love the show, I incentivize people that want to leave a rating and review. And I talk about it in the podcast. If they're getting value from it and they want to leave a rating and review on iTunes and then send me a screenshot of it, they can actually join my membership group for $1 instead of $49, what it normally is. You can come in for $1 for a month. And during that time, there's 2 office hours coaching calls where you and I can speak personally, face-to-face over video conferencing. I also am very active in the Facebook group where I answer people's questions. I'll critique people's content. So I walk people through creating a guest profile page and also a host prep sheet so that the host of the show has everything they need. And I will take a look at those. I'll give people feedback and all that good stuff. So it's the best way to directly connect with me is by, checking out the podcast. If it resonates with you, then joining my membership or at least taking the free course. I do look at those worksheets that my students do, even if they're not paying me, so long as they complete it. So what happens is when people complete the course, if they say, yes, I want to do this, and they complete it, then they get a special prize from me at the end if they complete it. And I do take a look. And so, and then I also work with people at a higher level. My VIP clients hire me to represent them, to be their extension, if you will. So I do all the research for them. I reach out, I pitch them to hosts, I get them booked and prep them for interviews. Those are the ways people can work with me.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Nicole. What are ways that folks can reach you, whether it's your website or on social media?
If this resonates with them, to check out the podcast, Get Guest Ready. And what I'm going to do is put together a page on my website. It's interviewsthatconvert.com/paw print. So if you go to interviewsthatconvert.com/paw print, I'll have everything you need to know about the show there. You can listen right on the page. There's also the opportunity to join my program that I was talking about for free there. And at the bottom of the page, you'll actually find links to all of my social media, my email, everything you need to know. So if you go to interviewsthatconvert.com/paw print, that's where you'll find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that and for offering that resource. When you think about someone with, not that much resources, like the way a lot of animal rescues run, but you think about what are some of the basic things they can do to really just kind of make that message pop, what would you suggest?
One of the beautiful things with getting your message out on a podcast or any media platform, if you will, is that then you can what we call repurpose it. So you can take that content and you can let people know about it in lots and lots of different ways. And I know, Harold, that you're sharing a lot of things about different social media platforms, which is super exciting. So, for example, if you're on my show, for example, you're on my show, you can send a message out on social media as soon as we book the interview, before you're even a guest, and you can say, I'm really excited to be interviewed by Nicole Holland on the Business Building Rockstars Show. Take a listen, subscribe so you don't miss it when I'm on, right? So then you're letting people know you're going to be on a show. You're getting attention to that show. You're getting attention from the host because you're providing value to them and sharing about what they're doing. Ooh, how exciting is that, right? You can put that on Instagram. You can put that on Twitter. You can put it anywhere that you have an audience. You may even want to email it out to your current database. And here's the thing. just like I said before, with putting it out there on Facebook that, hey, I want to be on a podcast to share about our message. Your biggest advocates are people who've already supported you. So go back to that. And then the other thing is, if you're, think about what I said with Facebook before about letting people know that you're going to be on a show, or that you want to be on a show rather, and asking them for their support. You have this database of, people who have adopted, who are suppliers, are friends, are advocates. And that's a great way to connect and reach out. I would say email them and say the same thing. We are so excited to get our message out. We're going to start looking for podcasts to get featured on, to share about our mission, our message, whatever. And you would say what that is, obviously. And so you want to let them know. You say, if you have any connections to podcast hosts who you think would love to hear from us, please respond to this email. Let me know. Also, if you listen to podcasts, tell us what you listen to, because here's something that I teach in my podcast, Get Guest Ready, and in Get Guest Ready School. People are holistic. Somebody who is an advertising exec has a whole life outside of being an advertising exec. In fact, maybe they're animal rescuers, And so when we look at who your ideal listener is, who your target market is, who you want to reach out to, and this may be different for different things. You may want to have an initiative to reach out to prospective pet parents and adopters. You may want to have reach out to veterinarians and service professionals that can sponsor and support your organization. There's different people you're going to want to reach out to. But when you get clear on who that person is, who that listener is that you want to reach, then you can go after them. So asking your database of people already that you already have about what shows do you listen to? What do you enjoy? Remembering that they're complete people and they're not just animal rescue people. You may find things about comedy. You may find things about politics. You may find things about religion, but you'll get then some feedback and some information about what other podcasts they listen to in their life. And then you can check those out. Here's something. There's a lot of religious podcasts, okay? So let's say you are Catholic. You may find that you can go onto a faith-based program that focuses on the lives of Catholic parishioners. I'm sorry if I'm getting the words wrong, but because they're going to be interested in your life and what you do. And there's going to be other Catholics who are listening, who are like, oh my goodness, that resonates with me. That makes sense. I should go check out how to adopt, stuff like that, right? So just remember that we are not living in a tunnel. There's all kinds of things all around us. And so just be aware that you don't have to just look for podcasts that speak about or to animal issues. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Wow. That was unbelievable, because a lot of the best nonprofit organizations, they go to their supporters and they say, hey, we want to hear from you. And it's amazing. Just like you said, a lot of times folks have these talents that you just, unless you ask, they won't reveal their talents to you. And that's something, sometimes can be something that really takes an animal rescue organization to that next level. And
it's funny because a lot of times we forget what we're so good at, because it comes so easy, and it doesn't come easy to other people, but we forget that it doesn't come easy to other people. So, in fact, there was a podcast host I love, and he's a newer podcast host, and he's trying to get his footing and everything together. And I was like, okay, you need to be on Twitter. And I've told him a few times, you need to be on Twitter, because it makes my job harder when a host isn't on Twitter, because that's where I speak to my audience. And so he said, oh, I can't do that because I would need another VA for that. I'm so overwhelmed. And I'm like, no, hold on. And I already have a rapport with him. So I said, I'm putting you on Twitter. 10 minutes later, I came back. I go, here's your Twitter handle. Here's your password. And I had already uploaded pictures, and I was like, boom. It's like, you don't have to do anything with it, but now you're on Twitter. Just that step that was like so exhausting. And it was like on his to-do list. I could take it off of his list in just a few minutes, because it's easy for me. And you never know, like you said, what talents, what resources you do have available to you without letting people know what you need.
We want to say thank you to Nicole Holland for sharing some incredible advice for your animal rescue organization. If you want to learn more about Nicole Holland and get guest ready, you can go to her website, interviewsthatconvert.com/pawprint. You can also go to our show notes to find the same links. This is pawprint.com/115. If you'd like to meet me or Nancy on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, search for This is Pawprint. We're almost at 1,000 followers on Instagram, so please join the conversation. If you'd like to listen to more episodes of Pawprint, you can find us on your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes, SoundCloud, or Pocket Casts. Search for Pawprint Animal Rescue and hit the subscribe button to get the latest episodes immediately. Stay tuned next week when we ask Allie McAdam what would she do for an animal rescue organization. She's an Instagram strategist and she has some wonderful advice, so stay tuned next week for Allie McAdam. Thanks for sharing Pawprint with your friends and family. We're already at 115 episodes and we couldn't have done it without you, so thank you. And remember, you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time on Pawprint.
Pawprint is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.